Hello everybody. Firstly, we would like to express our gratitude to the organizers of this symposium for both its inception and its impeccable execution. Regrettably, while we cannot be present in Birmingham, as just the same days, we are hosting an international conference at the Fine Arts Faculty of the University of La Laguna in Tenerife in the Canary Islands, where we are now. The Congress resonates closely with the themes of this Birmingham Symposium, delving deep into the intricacies of contemporary drawing. Notably, some of our guest lecturers are shared. For instance, Joana graced our conference with her insights just yesterday. This overlap, even in timing, is no mere coincidence, but underscores the Burkeonian interest in this discipline, both academically and artistically. Drawing has long been a favorite medium to capture the speculative processes, formal solutions, and material qualities intrinsic to textile practices. The significance of this graphic endeavor spans from pioneering artists of historical avant-gardes to the reimagining of textile art from the 1960s onward in the so-called Nouvelle Tapisserie. This legacy persists in various contemporary creators. Rather than viewing drawing as a mere subsidiary or supplementary activity confined to crafting and pattern or motif that's later transferred to the final textile piece, our perspective champions the value of drawing as a pivotal instrument for contemplation. It delves into the materiality, cultural heritage, pedagogical transmission, and the technical peculiarities of the textile medium. It is not our aim in this brief presentation to undertake a condensed history of the graphic production carried out over this period. Instead, we would like to articulate some general coordinates from which the relationships between drawing and textile practice can be examined. These coordinates prompt us to consider drawing as a especially relevant domain for reflecting on its speculative capacities and possibilities, or to view drawing quite directly as research. Moreover, our deliberate emphasis on female artists in the title of our talk introduces an international gender dimension that warrants contemplation. Beyond the reality that the majority of artists who have delved into the textile realm have been women, we would like to push this discourse a bit farther. We wish to explore if there is a distinctiveness or specificity in terms of sex gender in these graphic productions tied to textile practice. We shall initiate this concise cartography by identifying some pivotal axes of the interrelation between drawing and textiles, basing our exploration on the works of female artists. Many of these works have never been seen before and remain unpublished or either have been sparingly disseminated. This includes, for instance, the works of the Catalan artist Aurelia Muñoz, coming from her private archives, or those sourced from the holdings of the Thomas Paoli Foundation in Lausanne, which is one of the most significant collections devoted exclusively to textile art. To both institutions, we would like to thank for having granted their permission to showcase these images here. The first, and perhaps the most apparent correlation between the two domains, drawing and textiles, lies in the relationship between line and thread. In this correlation, the slender, elongated strand resulting from the spinning of various fibers stands as the immediate equivalent of the drawn line. The act of drawing, in its effective trajectory across the chosen medium, emerges as fundamentally analogous to the thread. Both embody a similar condition, simultaneously sharing a comparable potential in their unfolding. In the realm of drawing, potentiality reveals and unfolds through the act of tracing lines. While in textiles, it is the various techniques that establish the order, distribution, and articulation of the threads that compose them. The qualities imparted by the materiality and distinctive processes of each textile technique bestow upon the lines of these drawings a wholly unique stature. Within them, a line does not delineate a profile or contour. It does not synthesize a diagram. The line neither models a volume nor projects a three-dimensional object, and certainly it does not function as a purely formal element extending across a surface perceived as a plane. A drawing like Knots by Annie Albers, created in 1947, is one of the early formulation of a motif that the author would return to at various points in her career, embodying a singularity where the line becomes imbued with the values of textile materials, as well as the temporalities and processes inherent in them. The clear and precise graphics delineate a complex interweaving of parallel and continuous lines that simultaneously evoke a thread being knotted and intertwined in multiple distributions across the paper. The simplicity and clarity of the means employed, limited to the use of graphite on paper, essentially the components, drawing in its most classical sense, heighten this equivalence between drawing and thread. Albers employs a subtle and simple dotting in certain areas, which, while not constituting a direct spatial allusion, does incorporate a visual tension that activates the line's dynamism. However, the graphic representation is never a depiction of a thread. The fact that the lines fade at their ends, as seen at the top and bottom of the surface, acts as a strategy to negate that interpretative possibility. This is articulated in the title Knots, representing the culmination of knotting and intertwining actions fundamental to the diverse techniques of weaving, thereby infusing the graphic purity with a vital temporal and procedural element. The lines overlap, intersect, and align, even if it's only in a virtual manner, one over the other. The gesturality implicit in the creation of knots embodies a unique tempo and performativity that doesn't necessarily correspond with the order and execution movement of the graphics, but modulates and articulates with various variables within. We could say that in this image, the speculative and investigative dimension of the graphics occupies a liminal space between the realms of textiles and drawing. It's precisely this in-between position that the graphics assume, which determines the uniqueness we wish to highlight in our approach. In some instances, the invention of the unique graphical solution emerges as an effective method to contemplate the formal and temporal structures characteristics of various textile techniques like weaving, embroidery, macrame, etc. Examining the unpublished notebooks of the Catalan artist Aurelia Muñoz, where the author explores both the manual demands as well as the historical genealogy and etymology of certain embroidery stitches or macrame knots, we observe how these drawings serve to document, report, and convey information pertaining to central knowledge, thus allowing for its perpetuation into the future. These drawings bear a prominent educational component in which Muñoz offers a graphical transcription of the gestures and execution order required by various weaving modalities, such as knotting, sewing, embroidering, the distribution of warp and weft, typically taught and conveyed through direct observation. The composition, structure, and characteristics of the fabrics are captured on paper, demonstrating a desire to preserve through drawing procedures traditionally transmitted orally in popular traditions.
The educational aspect of Muñoz's drawings is also evident in her collaboration with Liberata Mas, which led to the publication of the school manual Al Macramé a la Scuola. Throughout the 1980s, Al Macramé a la Scuola was a valuable and widely disseminated tool within the Catalan educational system for teaching the macrame technique to new generations. The visual analogy between the diagrams in this school book and the drawings in Muñoz's personal notebooks, which meticulously illustrate the formation of knots fundamental to the macrame technique, reveals how these notebooks encapsulate a condensation of the speculative processes that will be foundational to the pedagogical project. Consequently, drawing emerges as a new, effective, and essential tool to perpetuate this practical manual heritage that is at risk of fading away. Additionally, beyond the technical aspect, each piece unveils a significant aesthetic dimension. According to Muñoz, the beauty of any textile piece relied on the artist's ability to concurrently employ multiple techniques, thereby infusing the textile work with a broad spectrum of effects. This viewpoint justifies the comprehensive analysis of knots in her notebooks. Muñoz not only studied the overall impact of knots within the textile work, but also explored this presence as independent formal motifs, abstracting them from their repetitive nature and presenting them in a unique and autonomous manner. The various types of macrame knots in themselves give rise to graphical figures of substantial aesthetic potency. The introduction of new variables to the textile realm, such as three-dimensionality, monumental size, and interrelation between object and actual space, poses a series of questions that the artist of the Nouvelle Tapisserie will aim to explore, utilizing graphics as an effective mode of artistic and conceptual reflection. These emerging considerations lead to a production of drawings where the calculation of various parameters involved in the distribution and display of the works takes on pivotal importance. The drawings executed on graph or tracing paper by Aurelia Muñoz are particularly evocative and suggestive. Thanks to the materiality of the different supports used, they offer a unique visual solution to invoke spatiality and volume. This is made possible by overlaying various graphical layers and leveraging the translucent quality of papers typically used in pattern making. These drawings, accompanied by precise indications regarding dimensions, measurements, and calculations, represent a way to investigate the various spatial and formal variables that the emancipation from bidimensionality demands. This includes studying the effects of gravitational forces on the works, the unfolding of different elements of the piece, varying perspectives, and installation methods. Additionally, the significance attributed by these artists to textures, weaves, and the physical characteristics of fibers, yarns, and fabrics, that is, to the materiality of textiles, necessitates as well a distinct form of drawing. For the creation of a tapestry in 1981, Romanian artist Ritzi Jacobi employed a style of drawing that used cardboard as an appropriate support. Its coarse and rude character effectively evokes the various effects of raw textures and the irregular craftsmanship, underscoring the unique materiality of the work, made with cotton, goat hair, sisal, linen, and bamboo. Here, Jacobi employs spots, diluted effects, and dissolved blurs, all of which are composed of diffuse strokes maintained with a rich palette of browns, grays, and whites. These elements visualize the different effects of colors, tones, and textures that the transposition of drawing to a textile support tends to provoke. In this case, we cannot speak of drawing as merely an abstract or formal play. It may be more accurate to say that the relationship these spots establish with the materials, fibers, and hairs of tapestry is one of mutual emulation. Another graphical solution that underpins the unique relationship between drawing and textile is the continuous use of grid-like structure as a fundamental coordinate upon which to unfold complex formal configurations. While the grid has been a compositional system persistently explored throughout human history, it is within the paradigm of geometric and formal restriction imposed by the dominant narrative of modernism, marked notably by abstract avant-garde and minimalism, that the grid attained an exemplary status. However, the use of the grid in the drawings of numerous textile artists is often carried out on such a mundane support as the print grid on the page of typical school notebooks, which already destabilize that ideal model of modernism in its most formalist sense. The orthogonal lines, as they appear, for example, in the notebook 1970-80 by Annie Albers, but also in her book on weaving, are the record and transcription of the intersection between the warp and weft on the loom. If the vertical lines correspond with the longitudinal threads, the horizontal ones are equivalent to the transversal passage of the weave. Thus, the grid transforms into a notation structure fundamentally different from the diagram of abstract geometric trends. The grid in these drawings occurs as a special vibration derived from the craftsmanship and tension inherent in the operation and procedures active on the loom. The diverse variations, inversion, and the structural distributions that these drawings by Albers present, originating from the simple contrast between black of the graphite and the white of the paper, are propelled not only by prodigious formal inventiveness, but also echo the materials, force, and gestures of textiles. We could even point to a particular genealogy, whether known to Albers or not, between these drawings and the manuscript album of designs for lace and embroidery, which became especially popular from the 16th century onwards, where grids were reproduced, offering a repertoire of patterns to be transferred to fabric through various techniques. Much more than the pages that reproduce predefined motifs conforming to somewhat standardized models, we find the page where the grid is entirely blank particularly interesting. This emptiness will allow women to trace their own graphic resolutions. A good example is the page here at the bottom. A small motif emerges on the grid, crafted in soft colors, seeming to duplicate itself in faded tones.
To end, we would like to pose some open questions. We wonder whether it might be possible to discuss, based on the relationship between the realms of drawing and textiles, not only of a genealogy which appears evident, but especially so, of a lexicon and a graphical memory inherently feminine, given that textile craft has been intertwined for centuries with activities traditionally assigned to women? Are these drawings a repository of material and immaterial investigation of knowledge, gestures, and crafts performed by women, which have been conveyed through channels that have not been valued or recognized by the heteropractical norms? Do these drawings resonate with the uniqueness, singularity, absolutely unassimilable and irreducible to the parameters that have determined the prevailing notion of artistic disciplines? We wish to conclude with a photograph of women's hands captured by Aurelia Muñoz on her 1960s journey to Mexico, where she explored the textile practices of indigenous communities. This image stands as a hypothesis, still non-discursive and solely visual, suggesting that the answer to these inquiries might indeed be affirmative. Thank you very much on behalf of all three of us.